Hello, and welcome back to Horror Drift Stories. Before we begin, feel free to leave a comment and tell me where you're listening from. I love reading them. If you enjoy drifting into dark and unsettling stories, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Now, get comfortable, relax your mind, let the outside world fade away, and let's begin. Story 1. Its face was starting to melt. At first, it happened slowly, almost quietly, like something natural. Then the sound came, a sharp, angry sizzling that filled the kitchen, like meat thrown onto a burning pan. Chunks of flesh loosened and slid away from its face, falling in wet pieces through the cracked wooden floorboards. The smell was unbearable, thick and metallic, burning the back of my throat. The thing that had once looked exactly like Jack's little sister dropped to its knees and screamed. But it wasn't a human scream. The sound that came out of its mouth was deep, twisted, and wrong. It echoed too long. It carried an anger that didn't belong to any living person. Its voice cracked and warped as it cried out, as if multiple throats were screaming at once. It clawed at its own face, fingers digging into melting skin, speeding up the acid's work. Its nails scraped against bone. It threw itself violently across the kitchen floor, slamming into cabinets, knocking chairs over, writhing on its back, then rolling onto its knees again. Its arms flailed wildly, hands slick with dissolving flesh. It stumbled forward, dragging itself toward Jack, leaving dark, steaming smears on the floor behind it. Jack backed away, his heels slipping, his eyes locked on the thing wearing his sister's body. His mouth opened, but nothing came out at first. His chest shook as he tried to breathe. When he finally screamed, it was broken and raw. This was never how it was supposed to happen. When we first realized the truth, when the idea finally took shape in our minds, we had planned everything carefully. The three of us would corner it when no one else was around. We would sit it down. We would ask questions. We needed answers. We needed to know what had happened to Jack's real sister. Because whatever this thing was, it wasn't her. We had gone back and forth for weeks, whispering late at night, replaying memories, small details that didn't make sense on their own, but became impossible to ignore when stacked together. The way she stared for too long, the way she paused before answering simple questions, like she was searching for the right response, the way her smile came a second too late. Jack didn't want to believe it at first. I could see the fight happening inside him, that hope clinging desperately to denial. But deep down, he knew. He had always known. He just didn't want to say it out loud. We had no idea what the thing was. Was it a demon? It seemed unlikely. Jack and his sister hadn't grown up religious. Their parents barely spoke about God. There were no crosses on the walls, no prayers at dinner. Possession felt like the wrong answer, but it was still an answer. Was it something else? An alien, maybe. A shapeshifter. Something wearing her skin. We had never seen anything like that before. No proof of extraterrestrial life. No stories that matched what we were seeing. But after everything we had witnessed, nothing felt impossible anymore. All we knew was this. Jack's sister was gone, and this thing had taken her place. When we confronted it, it stood there in the living room, looking confused, hurt, afraid. It swore it didn't know what we were talking about. It cried. It begged. It said our names the way Jack's sister used to, with that familiar warmth that almost made me doubt myself. Almost. We asked again and again. Where had she gone? What had it done to her? How had it taken her form? It gave us nothing. Just denial. Empty words. Perfect imitation. The longer it went on, the more frantic we became. Our voices rose. Our questions turned into accusations. I could feel my heart pounding, my hands shaking. We needed the truth, any truth, something real. Eventually, we reached the end of our patience. Jack's hands trembled as he reached into his coat pocket. Mine did too. The acid bottles were heavier than I remembered, cold against my fingers. We had stolen them from the chemical plant where we worked. Jack had hesitated that night, standing by the storage room, glancing over his shoulder, but he had taken them anyway. We told ourselves it was necessary. We unscrewed the caps. The thing stopped talking. For just a moment, it looked almost afraid. Then we threw the acid. The bottle shattered against its face, liquid splashing across skin, eyes, mouth. We expected something else to happen. A transformation, a reveal, some monstrous form underneath. But that never came. Instead, it screamed. The acid ate through flesh, revealing bone beneath, but the shape stayed the same. Human. Familiar. Horribly familiar. Jack stumbled backward and fell hard onto the floor, frozen in terror. The thing ran blindly through the house, crashing into furniture, knocking over shelves, screaming as it clawed at its own face. Underneath the melting skin, its skull peeked through, slick and white. Jack sobbed uncontrollably. He kept apologizing, his words tumbling over each other. I don't even know who he was apologizing to. I opened my mouth to shout, to say something, anything, but I didn't hear my own voice. Instead, I heard hers. Jack's real sister. The sound was soft and distant, like a song carried on the wind. It didn't seem to come from any specific direction. It was everywhere and nowhere at once. The melody was gentle and beautiful, just like I remembered. Sweet and comforting. My heart dropped. "Where are you?" I screamed, my voice cracking. No answer. The song continued. Slowly, it began to change. The notes stretched, sinking lower, twisting into something heavy and dark. The melody warped, turning into a deep, bitter sob, filled with rage and grief. The sound grew louder and louder, until it felt like it was inside my skull. I fell to my knees, clapping my hands over my ears, shaking violently. The world around me blurred, fading into a cloudy darkness. The kitchen, the walls, the floor, all disappeared. When I looked up again, everything was gone. Jack was gone. The thing was gone. The sound slowly faded, leaving behind a ringing silence. Then the room came back into focus. I sat there, unable to move, my body stiff with terror. Jack was standing now, laughing uncontrollably. The sound was sharp and broken, completely empty of joy. His eyes were wide and unfocused. The thing stood across from me, staring. Its face was ruined, melted. Barely holding together, it tried to speak to me, its mouth moving clumsily. But the only sounds that came out were thick guttural noises that didn't resemble words. Something inside me snapped. I got to my feet and ran. I bolted for the back of the house, slammed through the screen door, and leapt down the porch steps without looking where I landed. I tore through the yard toward the dark woods beyond, branches scratching my arms, my lungs burning. I looked back only once. This time, I heard Jack scream. It was wild and shrill and full of pure terror. I never went back. Later, I wondered if Jack regretted stealing the acid. I wondered if he blamed me for pushing him, for telling him it wasn't really his sister. But the truth is, it didn't take much convincing. He had seen the signs too. He had felt it. After that night, I packed what little I had and left town. I didn't say goodbye to anyone. I moved from place to place, taking whatever work I could find, never staying long. I avoided people, avoided attachments. Most nights, I lie awake alone in some cheap motel room, staring at the ceiling, soaked in sweat, listening to the building creak around me. And I wonder how Jack died. I wonder what finally happened in that house. I wonder what became of his sister. Sometimes, I hear her voice, soft, pretty, calling my name from somewhere nearby. Whenever that happens, I know it's time to leave. One day, I fear I'll be too tired to run. And when that day comes, I'll follow that beautiful voice into the dark and face that terrible, heartbreaking sound again. I just hope that when I finally reach it, it won't be the thing that once looked like Jack's little sister. Story 2. It has been 6 months since I last had a proper night's sleep. At first, I blamed stress, anxiety, or the constant noise of the city outside my apartment window. But 3 days ago, I realized something far worse. Sleep itself might be dangerous. Before this job, I was nothing. Not in a dramatic or emotional sense, but in the cold, official way that systems define people. I was a blank space in the economy. A number in a spreadsheet that politicians argue about on television, and then forget. I had been unemployed for 2 full years, long enough that employers stopped seeing me as unlucky and started seeing me as broken, unreliable, unhireable. My days blurred together into one suffocating routine. I woke up late because there was no reason not to. I refreshed job boards until my eyes hurt. I rewrote my resume again and again, adjusting fonts and wording even though I knew no one was reading it. I counted calories not to lose weight, but to survive longer. Every grocery trip became a math problem. Every purchase came with guilt. The silence in my apartment pressed down on me like a physical weight. I lived in a tiny box in a city that never shut up, surrounded by millions of people, yet completely alone. When you don't have a job, you lose the natural rhythm of life. There are no weekends, no evenings, no sense of progress. Just endless time, stretching forward like an open pit, and the constant pressure to justify your existence by pretending you are still useful. That was the mental state I was in when the phone rang. It wasn't an email. It wasn't a message through a job site. It was just a phone call in the middle of a Tuesday afternoon. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered anyway. Desperation makes you careless. The voice on the other end sounded flat, almost mechanical. Not rude, not friendly. Just empty. They didn't explain where they got my number. They didn't ask about my education or why I had been unemployed so long. They only asked 3 questions. Did I have 20/20th vision or correctable eyesight? Could I pass a psychological evaluation? Was I comfortable with high-volume visual processing? I said yes to everything. I would have said yes to anything. At that point, I would have agreed to clean toxic waste with my bare hands if it meant a paycheck. The interview took place in an office park on the edge of the city, one of those lifeless clusters of glass buildings that all look the same, like they were copied and pasted by a computer. The company was a third-party contractor, the kind that exists solely to take the blame for larger corporations. Everyone knows the platform they worked for, the one people spend hours scrolling through every day. But the platform doesn't want blood on its hands, so it hires companies like this to deal with the worst parts. The hiring manager didn't look at me while he spoke. He was beige in every possible way. Beige suit, pale skin, sandy hair, beige walls behind him, a humming fluorescent light overhead. The position is content moderation tier 3, he said, sliding a thick contract across the desk. You won't be dealing with nudity or copyright issues. You'll be filtering the extremes. He explained what that meant. Violence, hate speech, Illegal content. Things most people never want to see. That part didn't scare me. I needed the job. But then, he mentioned something else. There was a second category we would handle. Something called null. I asked what that meant. Empty, he said, finally looking at me. His eyes were tired, watery. Videos with no engagement potential. Static footage. Forgotten cameras. Silence. If there's no movement, no sound, and no clear subject for 5 seconds, you flag it as empty and remove it. Speed matters. You'll have quotas. So, I'm deleting boredom, I joked weakly. He didn't react. You're deleting waste, he said. Sign here. The rules inside the building were strict. The work floor was underground. A massive windowless room kept uncomfortably cold. Rows of cubicles lined the space, tall and padded to absorb sound. No phones, no smart devices. Everything locked away before entering. And the most important rule of all was no talking. The handbook said, verbal communication disrupted workflow. If you needed help, you pressed a yellow button. Emergencies were red. Otherwise, silence. I started on a Monday. My desk was identical to dozens of others. A chair, a monitor, and a keypad with 2 oversized buttons. Green for safe, red for flag. The software never slowed down. As soon as I logged in, the first video appeared. A dashcam clip from Russia. A crash. Shattered glass. A scream. Flag. Next, a teenager crying into a phone camera. Safe. Next, a dog running along a beach. Safe. Next, a hallway inside an abandoned hospital. No movement, no sound. Dust floating in light. 5 seconds passed. Flag. Empty. The work was exhausting in a strange way. The violent content was disturbing, but training had prepared us. We were taught to disconnect emotionally, to see pixels instead of people. What no one prepared me for were the empty videos. They were worse than the violence. I watched endless footage of nothing. Warehouses where nothing moved. Forest cameras showing leaves blowing for hours. Bedrooms where the owner had left long ago. The camera still running. We had 5 seconds to decide. Any hesitation hurt your score. Low scores got you fired. About 3 weeks in, I noticed him for the first time. It was early morning. The video showed a public park in London. Overcast. Normal. People walking dogs. In the background, near a group of trees, stood a man. Everyone else was moving. He wasn't. He faced the camera directly. Gray suit. Too stiff. Too still. Something cold crawled down my spine. I hit safe and moved on. 2 days later, I saw him again. This time in a subway station in Tokyo, reflected in the glass, watching the camera. Then again in a crowded market. Closer, clearer. He wore a blue lanyard, my company's lanyard. I tried to ignore it. I told myself I was imagining patterns. Sleep deprivation, stress. But then I saw my apartment. Yesterday, a living room. My living room, the same couch, the same table, the same empty orange juice bottle I had dropped on the floor that morning. It was a live feed. I flagged it without thinking. When I got home, everything was exactly where I had seen it. Tonight, it happened again. The feed opened to my apartment, messed up from where I searched for cameras. Then he walked in. The man in the gray suit. He moved through my home like he owned it. He looked up at the camera. He waved. Then he crawled under my bed. The bedroom door closed on its own. I couldn't move. Then the supervisor touched my shoulder. He wasn't surprised. He told me it was a test, that my apartment wasn't mine anymore. that I had agreed to this. I marked the video as internal. Now my shift ends in 20 minutes. I can't go home. I know what's waiting under my bed, and I don't think it ever planned to leave. Story 3. Anya hated the sound of the keyboard more than she hated silence. Silence was lonely, yes, but the clicking was worse, because it meant Jack was right there and still not with her. It meant he was only a few feet away, in the same house, in the same room sometimes, and yet unreachable. The screen glow would paint his face a cold blue. His eyes would stay fixed, unblinking, as if the game had poured itself into him and hollowed out everything else. Jack could sit at that laptop for hours. Not the normal kind of hours either. Not the casual, I'll play for a bit, that turns into a late night. These were long, deep stretches where time seemed to bend around him. He would forget to eat, forget to drink water, forget that Anya existed unless she stood in front of him and physically blocked the screen. At first, Anya tried to be understanding. Jack worked with computers. Games were part of his world. He talked about code the way some people talk about art or music. He could make something out of nothing, build a whole system, a whole set of rules, a whole universe. That was his career. She knew that. She had told herself that his hobbies would naturally overlap with his work. But this wasn't a hobby anymore. It felt like devotion. He had 5 years of it saved up. That was how he described it when she finally forced him to answer. 5 years of progress. 5 years of stored data. It was important, he said. Important in the way you'd say your childhood photos were important. Important in the way you'd say a family heirloom was important. The way he said it made her skin prickle. There was something guarded in his tone, like the game wasn't entertainment, like it was a vault, and Anya was outside the door of it, pressing her ear against cold metal, trying to hear what mattered more than her. The loneliness she endured was huge. It wasn't just my boyfriend is busy. It was something heavier and slower, something that sat in her chest and made the whole fancy house feel like an empty museum. The rooms were large. The furniture was expensive. The kitchen counters were stone that never seemed to warm. The hallway lights turned on automatically when you walked past, like the house was alive enough to notice her, even when Jack wasn't. Sometimes she would wander from room to room, just to hear her own footsteps. Sometimes she would stand at the wide windows and look out at the manicured lawns of their perfect neighborhood, the quiet streets, the soft glow of porch lights, and she would feel like she lived inside a display case. Jack had given her the life everyone told her she should want. A nice home, a safe area, comfort, security, but comfort without connection felt like punishment. When they went out on dates, Anya tried to hold on to hope. She would pick a place she liked. A restaurant with warm lighting and a quiet corner table, a small bar where music hummed low enough to talk over, a park path where the world felt real again. But Jack's eyes would drift. He would smile at the wrong moments. He would nod too quickly, like he was ticking off expected reactions. He'd glance at his phone and then put it away. But even when the phone was gone, she could still feel him slipping away. It was like he wasn't in the present moment, like he was halfway somewhere else. Anya would reach for his hand across the table and feel him squeeze back automatically without looking up. She would tell a story and hear him say, yeah, in a tone that sounded like he was talking to an annoying pop-up window. And then, sometimes, he would slip. He would mutter words that didn't belong in a conversation. Short phrases under his breath, as if he was playing even while he sat across from her. Anya couldn't always make them out, It sounded like numbers maybe, or commands. It made her stomach turn. She kept trying to talk to him. She kept trying different versions of the same conversation. At first, she was gentle. She would bring it up like a small concern, like it was something they could solve with a simple adjustment. "Can you take a night off?" she'd ask. "Just one night where it's us. No game." Jack would blink at her like she'd spoken a language he hadn't used in years. Then he'd smile quickly, the way he smiled at strangers, and he'd say, "Sure, yeah, you're right." And that would be it. No follow-up, no real change, no effort that lasted. He'd take her to dinner. He'd watch a movie with her. He'd sit close enough to look like a normal boyfriend, but his body would tense with impatience. His eyes would flick to the clock. He'd laugh at the wrong parts. He'd get up to use the bathroom and come back with that faint glow in his eyes, like he'd checked something. The moment Anya fell asleep or looked away, the laptop would open again. The clicking would start. That was when her patience began to crack. There were nights when she stood behind him and watched the back of his head, and a strange kind of rage rose inside her. Not just anger, something sharper, something that felt almost humiliating, like she was competing with a screen and losing. She tried to swallow it. She tried to be mature. She reminded herself that people had worse problems, but she didn't want to live in a house where she felt invisible. Eventually, she lost control. The first time it happened, it came out of nowhere. She had been holding it in for weeks, maybe months, and then one small thing tipped her over. Jack promised he'd come to bed in 10 minutes. She waited. 10 minutes became 40. 40 became 2 hours. She found him exactly where she'd left him, shoulders hunched, headphones on, fingers flying. She yanked the headphones off. "What is wrong with you?" she shouted. Her voice shocked even her. It sounded harsh in the cold air of the room. "Do you even hear yourself? Do you even realize I'm here?" Jack flinched like she had slapped him. For a second, his face twisted in confusion, then in anger. He looked at her as if she was an intruder who had wandered into his workplace. Anya's hands were shaking. Her eyes stung. She hated herself for how desperate she sounded, but she couldn't stop. "I feel like a ghost," she said. "I feel like you'd rather be with that game than with me." Jack stood up so fast, his chair rolled backward. "It's not a game," he snapped. Anya didn't understand why that sentence chilled her more than anything else he could have said. She stepped toward the laptop. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, wild with the sudden urge to do something that would finally force him to look at her, force him to feel what she felt. Jack saw it in her eyes and lunged forward. They moved at the same time, and for a moment her hand hit the laptop lid. The screen dipped, almost closing. Jack grabbed her wrist. "Don't," he hissed. His eyes were wide. Fear had mixed with rage in a way that made him look like someone cornered. Anya pulled back, furious. "It's a stupid computer game, Jack. That's all it is." That was when he said something that made her blood run cold. He shouted, "Are you stupid? Actually, to be stupid still requires a brain, and you don't even have a brain. Whatever you are, Anya, it doesn't have a name." The words struck her like a slap, worse than a slap. They were too personal and too strange, like he wasn't insulting her intelligence so much as her existence. Anya froze. Jack's breathing was heavy. His hands trembled, as if he'd barely stopped himself from doing something violent. He stared at her with disgust, then with panic, as if he had said something he couldn't take back. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Anya felt her throat tighten. She wanted to scream at him. She wanted to throw something. But something about the way he looked at her made her step backward instead, like she had suddenly realized she didn't know the person she lived with. She walked away without another word. For 2 days, she barely spoke to him. She moved through the house quietly, like a guest in someone else's life. Jack tried to act normal. He made coffee. He asked if she wanted anything from the store. He said sorry in a way that sounded practiced, like he was reading from a script. Eventually, they made up. Not because the problem was solved, but because the silence between them became unbearable. Jack promised he'd do better. He promised he'd limit his time. He promised that she mattered more. Anya wanted to believe him, and for a few days, it almost felt real. He stayed away from the laptop at night. He watched a show with her. He sat closer. He asked her questions and waited for the answers. But then the obsession crept back in. He began saving constantly. That was the word he used. "I just need to save something," he'd say, like he was doing a small chore, like he was putting away dishes, like it was harmless. Then one save became 10. 10 became an hour. Anya would hear him whispering to himself again, low, focused, like he was stitching something together, like he was holding something fragile in place. And that familiar loneliness returned, heavier each time, because now she knew what it meant. She knew he could choose her, and he was choosing the screen instead. Something bitter started growing in her. It wasn't just anger anymore. It was the urge to hurt him, the way he hurt her. She started imagining it, not as a fantasy of freedom, but as revenge. She pictured herself deleting everything. 5 years of progress. 5 years of whatever he cared about more than her. Gone in one click. She pictured his face when he realized. The thought gave her a guilty thrill. Then, one day, the opportunity arrived. Jack went to take a shower. He left the laptop open, sitting on the desk like it always did, humming softly. The game was on. The screen showed a familiar interface she didn't understand, filled with boxes and symbols, and a progress bar that seemed to stretch back into time. Anya stood in the doorway, listening to the water running behind the bathroom door. Steam began to seep into the hallway. Jack was distracted, vulnerable. The laptop waited. Her heart pounded as she stepped closer. Her fingers hovered over the trackpad. She told herself she wouldn't do it. She told herself she'd just close it, just shut it down and make him talk to her. But her hand moved anyway. She clicked through menus. She didn't even know what she was looking at, but the word delete was universal. She found the stored files, the folders marked by dates, years of dates. Her mouth went dry. A part of her screamed to stop. Another part of her smiled. She selected everything. She hit delete. A warning popped up. "Are you sure?" She didn't hesitate. Yes. The bar filled quickly, too quickly, like the system was happy to erase the weight of those years, like it had been waiting, and then it was done. 5 years gone. Anya felt a rush of joy so sharp it made her laugh under her breath. It was pure revenge, pure relief. For one shining moment, she felt like she had won. She would not compete with a game. Jack stepped out of the shower minutes later, towel around his waist, hair dripping. He walked toward the office like it was automatic, like his body was pulled by a magnet. Anya stood by the desk, arms folded, her pulse still racing. Jack glanced at the screen. At first, he didn't understand. Then he saw it. The empty folders, the missing files, the place where 5 years used to be. His face drained of color so fast it looked unreal, like all warmth left his body at once. "What did you do?" he whispered. Anya felt her victory wobble. The fear in his voice wasn't normal anger. It was something deeper. a kind of panic you'd hear from someone who had just watched a loved one die. "I deleted it," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I deleted all of it. Maybe now you'll actually pay attention to me." Jack stared at her. Then he exploded. He didn't just shout. He came apart. He threw the chair across the room. It smashed into the wall. He yanked drawers open and slammed them shut. He swept papers off the desk like they were trash. He kicked the side table, sending a lamp crashing onto the floor. The house, their perfect fancy house, suddenly looked fragile, like it could be destroyed in minutes. Anya backed away, shocked by the violence. She had never seen him like this, not even when he had insulted her. Jack turned toward her, eyes wild, and his voice broke as he screamed, "What have you done, Anya?" "I was doing this for you." "For me?" she repeated, confused. "What are you talking about?" Jack's breathing was ragged. He looked like he had run a marathon, like his body was shaking apart. Then his expression shifted. The anger didn't disappear, but it focused, like he had decided something, like he had been forced to finally say the truth. "Your body and mind were broken in a car accident," he said, voice trembling. "It wasn't a small crash. It wasn't something you recovered from. You were gone." Anya stared at him, not understanding. Jack kept going, words pouring out faster, like if he stopped, he might never be able to speak again. "We retrieved what little consciousness we could," he said. "Fragments, pieces, the last signals before everything went dark. We put what we could into this clone, into you." Anya's heart hammered in her chest. She felt suddenly too aware of her own body, the weight of her arms, the warmth of her skin, the way the room smelled like shampoo and broken glass. "That's not funny," she whispered. Jack laughed once, sharp and empty. "You think I'm joking? You think I'd waste 5 years of my life on a joke?" He pointed at the laptop with a shaking hand. "I've been adding to you," he said, "building you back up, layer by layer, memory by memory, personality, emotion, the parts that make you you. I've been updating you constantly, making sure your mind and your body work together, making sure you don't slip." Anya felt the room tilt. Her stomach turned like she was falling. "You deleted everything," Jack said, and his voice sounded small now, broken. 5 years. Everything I saved, everything I stored, everything I used to keep you stable." Anya tried to speak, but her tongue felt heavy. She took a step backward, and her knees buckled. For a moment, she thought she was going to faint. Then her body did something worse. A strange weakness spread through her limbs, like the muscles were forgetting how to hold her up. Her fingers tingled, her vision blurred around the edges. She grabbed the desk, but her hand slipped off as if her skin had turned numb. "Jack," she whispered, and the sound of her own voice felt distant, like it was coming from the other end of a tunnel. Jack moved toward her, but he looked terrified now, not angry, like he had finally realized what her deletion had set in motion. Anya's mind felt like it was sliding, not falling, sliding slowly into something deep and dark, like a sinkhole opening under her thoughts. Images flickered behind her eyes, not memories exactly, more like half-formed scenes, a flash of headlights, a scream, a feeling of weightlessness, a sudden black, then static. Her thoughts began to stutter, repeating the same phrases, looping in a way that wasn't normal. She tried to hold on to something real, the feel of the carpet under her knees, the sound of Jack breathing, the distant hum of the laptop fan. But it was like her mind couldn't grip anything, and somewhere inside that slipping darkness, something started to happen, like a system reacting to failure. Her mind began to play games. Not fun games. Not entertainment. Mind games. Little distractions. Little loops. Quick patterns meant to keep a dying system alive. Like a machine flashing error messages and backup screens to avoid shutting down. She felt her thoughts trying to redirect into puzzles and sequences, trying to force continuity where there was none. She understood in a horrible, instinctive way what Jack meant. The stored past games weren't just files. They were anchors. They were the saved progress that carried her mind from past to present, and from present into the next moment. They were the thing that connected her to herself. And now they were gone. Anya tried to inhale, but her chest felt tight, like she was breathing through cloth. Her vision flickered again. Jack's face blurred. His voice sounded far away. "I can fix it," he said. Or maybe he didn't. Anya couldn't be sure. Words were becoming shapes instead of meaning. The living room wavered like heat over asphalt. Then her body gave up. She collapsed fully to the floor. And as she lay there, her skin began to feel strange. Too light. Too thin. Like it wasn't holding together properly. Like it was made of something that could come apart. She tried to lift her hand. It didn't move. She tried to speak. Her mouth opened, but only a weak sound came out, like air escaping a leak. Her mind sank deeper, and with it came a cold, terrible understanding. This wasn't a fainting spell. This was a shutdown. Her consciousness, whatever it truly was, started to break into pieces. She could feel it, not like pain, but like losing language, losing the sense of self, losing the ability to keep a single thought straight, and her body began to disintegrate, not dramatically at first, not like a movie, more like something drying out from the inside, like the structure holding her together was dissolving. Her fingertips felt like they were crumbling. Her legs felt distant, as if they belonged to someone else. Jack dropped to his knees beside her. His hands hovered over her body like he was afraid to touch her, afraid she would come apart faster if he did. Anya wanted to hate him. She wanted to scream at him for keeping this from her, for turning her into something that depended on his secret obsession. But she couldn't even hold on to anger. Her thoughts were fading into that dark sinkhole, swallowed by silence and static. And somewhere, deep inside, the last part of her mind kept trying to survive by creating distraction, by creating little internal games that could keep her conscious for another second, another minute. But without the saved progress, even those loops collapsed. The past could not feed the present. The present could not move forward. Everything stopped. And as the last light of awareness dimmed, Anya understood the final cruelty of it all. She had believed she was fighting a computer game for Jack's attention. But she wasn't competing with the game. She was competing with the thing that was keeping her alive. Then the fancy house, the expensive furniture, the warm lights, the soft carpets, all of it drifted away. And Anya disappeared. Story 4. Rue woke up to her name. It came from outside the cabin. Not loud, not rushed. Just clear enough to slip through the gaps in the walls like smoke. She lay still in the dark, listening. Marcus was beside her, breathing heavy in that deep sleep that came after a long day in the fields. Bertie was in her crib by the window, asleep on her back, one small hand curled near her cheek. The whisper came again. Rue. 7 nights now. Every time it sounded closer. Every time it said her name, like it had a right to it. Rue didn't move. She didn't answer. Her grandmother had drilled that lesson into her when she was still small enough to sit on the porch steps with her knees pulled up to her chest. Never answer a voice that calls your name in the dark. Not through a door, not through a window, not from the trees, not even if it sounds like someone you love, especially if it sounds like someone you love. The cabin was hot. August in Georgia made the air thick and wet, like you had to push it out of your way just to breathe. The swamp nearby smelled sour in the heat. Everything sweated. Wood, skin, sheets, even the tin roof when the sun hit it. Marcus shifted, tossed an arm across his face, and mumbled something that didn't turn into words. Birdie made a tiny noise in her sleep, the kind that meant she might wake soon. Then the whisper returned, different this time. Rue Hatcher. Rue's whole body went tight. The voice knew her full name now. That was new. That was worse. She pressed her hands flat against the mattress, feeling the rope springs beneath the thin fabric. Her heart hammered, but she kept her breathing slow and steady. Marcus couldn't know. Not yet. Maybe not ever. She stared into the darkness until her eyes watered. The whisper lingered a moment longer, like it was waiting to see if she'd break. Then it faded back into the night. Rue didn't let herself relax until she heard the first mockingbird outside. Dawn was coming. The things that called at night went quiet when the sun came up. She got out of bed carefully. The floorboards gave a soft complaint. She paused, waited for Marcus to stir. He didn't. She crossed the room, pumped water at the sink, and splashed her face. The water was warm. Nothing in summer ever cooled down properly. Marcus would wake soon. Breakfast had to be started before he got up. Everything had to look normal. Normal was what kept him from asking questions. And questions were dangerous. Questions made people look too closely. Birdie stirred in her crib. Rue went to her daughter, bent over her, and smiled the way mothers smile when they're trying to keep fear from showing. Birdie's eyes opened, dark and bright. 10 months old, and already trying to sit up on her own. Already making little sounds like she was testing words in her mouth. Rue lifted her gently, feeling her solid warmth, her baby weight. Then she saw it. A line circled Birdie's neck. Red, raw, like a rope had rubbed her skin hard enough to scrape it open. Fresh enough that Rue could see the faint pattern of twisted fibers imprinted into the mark. Her hands went cold. She turned Birdie toward the window so the weak, gray morning light could fall across the baby's throat. It wasn't a rash. It wasn't bug bites. It wasn't heat irritation. The placement was too exact, right where a noose would sit. Rue's stomach dropped so fast it felt like she might throw up. "What you looking at?" Marcus's voice came from behind her. Rue forced her face to stay calm as she turned. "Come here and see," she said, keeping her voice steady. Marcus crossed the room in his undershirt and work pants, rubbing sleep from his eyes. He leaned over her shoulder. The moment he saw Birdie's neck, he went rigid. "Hell is that?" he said, the words coming out sharp. "Don't know," Rue replied. He stared at the mark, like if he stared hard enough, it would change into something harmless. Then he tried to make sense of it the way men do, by grabbing at the first explanation that didn't scare them. Did something. He stopped. Started again. "You checked the crib?" Maybe. The blanket got twisted around her neck while she slept. Rue didn't answer with words. She just nodded toward the crib. The blanket was folded neatly at the foot, untouched. Marcus looked anyway. His hand moved the blanket like he didn't trust what he was seeing. Then he touched Birdie's neck with one finger, gentle, careful. Birdie giggled and grabbed his hand like she was playing. Marcus swallowed. "We need to take her to see Doc Murray," he said. "No." He turned toward Rue like he hadn't heard right. "Rue, I said no." Rue softened her voice on purpose. "It's probably just heat rash. Babies get all kind of marks in the summer. I'll put some salve on it. Keep her out the sun today. Marcus studied her face. He'd been doing that more lately, like he was trying to read something written too small to see. You been sleeping all right? He asked. Fine enough. You don't seem fine, he said. You seem. He trailed off, shook his head like he didn't want to finish the thought. Never mind. Got to get on to the fields. He dressed in silence. Rue made grits like she always did. He ate without looking at her much, kissed Birdie's forehead before leaving. At the door, he paused. That mark don't fade by tonight. We taking her to the doctor. He said, don't care what you say. Then he was gone, boots crunching on the dirt path. Rue waited until she couldn't hear him anymore. Only then did she let her shoulders sag. She went back to the crib to lay Birdie down for a nap. That's when she saw it, a black feather on the mattress where Birdie had been sleeping. Long, dark, iridescent when it caught the light. Crow feather. And it didn't belong in that cabin. The windows were shut. The door had been locked. Rue picked it up. The shaft was cold even in the heat, like it had been pulled out of something that didn't belong in summer. She didn't have to guess what it meant. The mark on Birdie's neck, the feather, the whispers that kept calling her name. It all pointed back to the same place and the same truth Rue had been trying not to touch for 2 years. They were calling in the dead. Rue didn't remember her mother. Not really. She had been too small, barely a year old when her grandmother, Mama Sable, took her to the old oak at the crossroads. Rue had no memory of the wagon ride, no memory of the tree, no memory of what was given and what was taken. But Mama Sable told her the story once. Only once. And Rue had learned early that when Mama Sable told you something once, you were supposed to hold on to it like scripture. Rue was 7 years old. She had been sitting on the porch snapping beans into a bowl, asking questions the way kids do. Simple questions that feel harmless until they land on a sore spot. Why don't I have a mama like other kids? Mama Sable's hands had gone still. Her eyes had fixed on something far away, like she was watching a memory play out across the trees. Your mama's name was Violet, she said finally. Most beautiful thing I ever brought into this world. Rue had leaned closer, hungry for details. And on your first birthday, Mama Sable continued, I took you both to the crossroads, to the old oak. Rue remembered the way her chest had tightened. Even back then, Mama Sable's voice had fear in it, buried deep under the toughness. Violet put you in my arms, Mama Sable said, kissed your head. Then she walked under that tree, and she didn't come back. But where'd she go? Rue had asked. Into the dark, Mama Sable answered. And when she looked at Rue, her eyes were hard like stone. Don't ask no more questions about this. Don't go near that goddamn oak. You hear me? I saved us all. Your mama understood that. Someday you will too. After that, when people asked about Violet, Mama Sable told them she ran off with a man from Alabama. Nobody believed it, but nobody questioned it either. Folks disappeared sometimes, especially folks like them. You didn't ask too much, because asking meant trouble. Rue grew up with scraps. A blue dress with white flowers hanging in the wardrobe. A few photos that didn't capture Violet's voice or warmth. Stories from neighbors who remembered her laugh. But Rue never had the real thing. Never had the sound of her mama calling her in from the yard. Never had arms around her when she cried. Just the empty space where a mother should have been. Mama Sable's cabin sat a 1/4 mile from Rue's own house, hidden behind pines, Nobody had been inside since the old woman died 2 years ago. Rue had the key. She had meant to clean it out. She had told herself she would go through the things, take what mattered, burn what didn't. But every time she got close, something inside her turned to ice, and her courage failed her. Not today. Rue left Birdie with Marcus's sister, told her she had to pick up laundry from town. That wasn't true, but it wasn't far from the truth either. She needed to be away from the house, needed to move, needed to do something before she lost her nerve again. She walked to Mama Sable's cabin, unlocked the door, and stepped inside. The smell hit her immediately. Dried herbs hanging from rafters, old candle wax, a sharp edge underneath it, something like metal and smoke and old secrets. Mama Sable's work table still held her tools, knives, mortars, little cloth bags tied with red string. Bottles lined the shelves, filled with roots, powders, and things Rue didn't want to name out loud. The root cellar was in the back, accessed through a trapdoor in the floor. Rue lit a kerosene lamp and climbed down the ladder. The journals were where she'd left them the last time she came down here, wrapped in oilcloth, hidden behind jars of preserves. 3 leather-bound books. Mama Sable's handwriting covered every page in tight, cramped lines, some in English, some in symbols Rue still couldn't fully read. Rue had been working through them slowly for 2 years, trying to understand what her grandmother had really been. People called Mama Sable a root doctor, a healer, a woman with knowledge others feared. But Rue knew there had been something else, too, something that demanded payment. Today, Rue didn't flip pages at random. She knew exactly what she needed. She found the entry, and her breath caught in her throat. August 1898. Isaiah Crane and 11 others taken from us, strung up at the oak like they was nothing but meat. White woman claimed assault, and that was all it took. No trial, no mercy, just rope. Rue's fingers tightened on the journal. The next lines were messy. Anger pressed into the ink. I went to that tree, called out to anything that would answer. I don't care if it was God or the devil or something older than both. My husband was hanging there. His neck broke, his eyes. The sentence ended in a slash of ink, so hard it tore the paper. Rue forced herself to keep reading. They came back, all 12 of them, but changed. Bound to the oak now, bound to something I don't understand. They offered protection, safety for the bloodline. No more ropes, no more fire. Our people would be sheltered. The price. The mother of the firstborn child, every generation, delivered at the oak on the child's first birthday. Rue's throat went tight. I agreed. God forgive me. I agreed. I chose life for the many over the few. My daughter Violet will be first. When she bears her first child, she'll pay the price. Then her daughter after her. Then hers. A small price for protection, they said. A necessary price. I chose life over death. What else could I do? Rue's hands were shaking. She read the date again. 30 years ago. Mama Sable had been planning this long before Violet was grown. Long before Violet even understood what it meant. Rue flipped more pages, scanning entries she'd read before but hadn't understood. Charms for neighbors, protection bags, blessings, curses. Stories about men who'd done wrong and paid for it. Stories about illnesses that vanished. Stories about luck that came like a flood. All of it fed by the same deal. All of it powered by a bargain made with dead men bound to an oak. Then she found another entry. September 1919. The month Rue's mother died. Violet turned 26 today. Rue turned 1. Violet knows what must happen. She's made her peace with it, walked to the oak on her own 2 feet, head held high, her baby girl too young to remember. Maybe that's a mercy. I wish there was another way. I've looked. God knows I've looked. But deals with the dead can't be broken, only kept. In 27 years, it'll be Rue's turn. And then her daughter. And then her daughter's daughter. The price of safety, paid in blood, generation after generation. But they'll live. They'll live without the rope, without the fire. That has to be enough. Rue closed the journal slowly. Her throat burned. Birdie's first birthday was September 28th, 1 month away. Rue had always known her mother died on her first birthday, but she had never truly understood why. She had never let herself think about it too hard. Mama Sable had told her not to. The town didn't talk. The family didn't ask. Silence was how you survived. But now, the whispers had started again. Now the debt was waking up. Rue got home before Marcus returned from the fields. She fed Birdie, put salve on the red mark, tried not to stare at it too long, tried not to notice that it wasn't fading. When Marcus came in, tired and sweaty, Rue had dinner ready. Her face looked calm because she forced it to. Her hands moved steady because she made them. "How's her neck?" Marcus asked, washing his hands at the pump. "Better, I think." Rue lied. "Let me see." She brought Birdie over. The mark looked darker than it had that morning. Marcus's jaw tightened. "That don't look better. Give it time." "Rue," he said, voice low. "What's going on?" "Nothing's going on. Babies get rashes. This ain't a rash." He traced the circle with a careful finger. "This looks like—" He stopped himself, but she heard the words anyway, like someone tried to hang her. "Like what?" Rue asked softly. Marcus shook his head. "Nothing. Forget it." But neither of them could forget it. They ate in silence that night. Marcus read from his Bible afterward, while Rue washed dishes. Birdie played on the floor with her rag doll, babbling, happy, and unaware. From the outside, it looked like a normal family in a normal cabin, on a normal summer evening, but everything was a lie built on fear. That night, Rue lay awake waiting. The whisper came at 3 in the morning, the way it always did. Rue Hatcher. The oak remembers. Rue squeezed her eyes shut and tried to pray, but prayer felt small against what she'd read. Mama Sable had taught her protection charms, taught her how to turn away bad luck and sickness, but those tricks wouldn't work here. You couldn't protect yourself from a debt you owed. September 28th, midnight. Don't make us come for her. The voice faded. Rue got up quietly, moved to her sewing basket, and pulled out what she'd hidden there. Salt, red thread. A silver dime Mama Sable had given her years ago and told her never to lose. Rue worked by candlelight, whispering the charm like a lullaby, hanging it over Birdie's crib. It wouldn't stop them, but maybe it would buy time. Maybe she could find another way, because walking to that oak and leaving Birdie without a mother was not a choice Rue could make. Not willingly. Not ever. Aunt Cleo lived in the next county, past the railroad tracks and through pine barrens that swallowed sound. Rue took the wagon at first light. Birdie sat on her lap, rocking gently with the wheels, drifting into sleep. Rue left Marcus a note. She said she needed to see family. Not a lie, exactly. Just not the whole truth. Aunt Cleo's place came into view behind the trees. Bottle trees surrounded the yard, dead branches stuck into the ground, with colored glass bottles hanging from them. Blue, green, amber. Folks said bottles could trap spirits, catch them before they entered your home. Aunt Cleo was on the porch, shelling peas into a bowl. She looked up as Rue climbed down. "Thought you might be coming round," she said. Rue's stomach clenched. "You knew?" "I got eyes, don't I?" Aunt Cleo said. "And I remember dates, even if your grandma thought I'd forget." She nodded at a chair. "Sit down. Let me see that baby." Aunt Cleo examined Bertie's neck and went still. "Lord have mercy," she whispered. "You know what it means?" Rue asked. Aunt Cleo looked up, eyes hard. "I know Sable made a deal 30 years back. I know your mama paid for it. I know it's your turn now." She leaned forward. "What I don't know is what you planning to do about it." "I ain't going to them," Rue said. Aunt Cleo's mouth tightened. "Then they'll take everyone. You understand that? Protection ends, deal breaks, and everybody Sable saved becomes forfeit. That's how these things work." "Don't care," Rue said, and she meant it in that moment. Aunt Cleo handed Bertie back carefully. "You say that now. Wait till your cousins start hanging from trees. Wait till Marcus—" "Don't," Rue snapped, voice breaking. Aunt Cleo sighed. "I'm just telling you what happens. Deals with the dead don't have loopholes. Then I'll find a way to end the deal." Aunt Cleo let out a short, bitter laugh. "You think Sable didn't try. She spent years looking. Didn't find nothing worth a damn. Maybe she wasn't looking in the right place. Or maybe there ain't no way out," Aunt Cleo said. "Maybe that's the whole point." She stood up. "Come on inside. If you determine to be a fool, least I can help you do it proper." Inside, Rue spread Mama Sable's journals across Aunt Cleo's kitchen table. Pages were marked with scraps of paper, symbols circled, notes scribbled in the margins. Aunt Cleo pointed at one symbol. "This means binding," she said. Then she pointed at a spiral. "And this is the underneath." Rue asked. She'd seen the word before, but Mama Sable never explained it. Aunt Cleo was quiet for a moment, choosing her words. "It's the place below the world," she finally said. "Below the dirt, below the roots, below everything living. Where things go when they ain't quite dead, but ain't quite alive neither." Rue stared at the spiral symbol. "Most dead folks move on," Aunt Cleo continued, "but some get caught. Held by grief, rage, bargains made in blood. The underneath holds them, uses them, and that's where the jury is?" Rue asked. "Bound to it through the oak," Aunt Cleo said. "Trees' roots go down into the underneath, and the underneath comes up through the tree. That's why cutting it down would be bad. You'd tear open a hole between here and there." Rue swallowed. "Can people get out of it?" she asked. Aunt Cleo flipped pages until she stopped at an entry near the back. "Here," she said. "This is what we need." The entry was dated 1920. "I've been studying the law of substitution. In conjure, debts can be transferred if the terms are met. A life for a life, but it must be freely given. No coercion, no trickery. True choice. Could the jury themselves be freed? If they're released from the underneath, would the deal end? Requires graveyard dirt from each jury member's true burial site. Blood of the petitioner. True names spoken at the oak at midnight. Risk. If the unbinding fails, the petitioner is taken instead. Too dangerous. I won't try it. Better to honor the deal than risk total loss." Rue read it twice. "She found a way," Rue whispered. "She found a maybe," Aunt Cleo corrected. "Big difference." She tapped the page. You got to find 12 graves scattered across 3 counties. Some marked, some not. Some buried quiet with no record. You might spend a month searching and never find them all. Then I better start, Rue said. And say you do find them, Aunt Cleo said. Say you get the dirt and say the words. What if it don't work? Then I'm taken instead of Bertie. And Marcus left alone with the baby, Aunt Cleo said. And the jury, still hungry. She shook her head. Girl. Rue closed the journal. Her head hurt like she'd been holding her breath too long. What would you do? Rue asked softly. Aunt Cleo was quiet for a long time. Then she said, I'd run. Take that baby and your man and go north. Change names. Never come back. The oak calls to me from 5 miles away, Rue said. You think distance gonna stop it? No, Aunt Cleo admitted. But at least you'd die free instead of chained to your grandma's mistake. Rue looked down at Bertie, sleeping in her arms. That baby didn't deserve chains. Not spiritual chains. Not family chains. Not any kind. I ain't running, Rue said. Aunt Cleo's eyes narrowed. You too much like Sable, stubborn as a root that won't pull. Then help me, Rue said. Aunt Cleo studied her for a long moment, then stood and went to a cabinet. She pulled out a cloth bag and dumped its contents on the table. I've been gathering supplies, she said. Figured you'd come round. A silver knife, a jar of blessed salt, white candles, and a rolled-up map. She unrolled the map. 12 X's marked different places across 3 counties. How'd you? Rue started. I've been a root worker 40 years, Aunt Cleo said. You think I don't have ways of finding things? She rolled the map back up and handed it over. You got 2 weeks to collect that dirt. Then we do the ritual the night before Bertie's birthday. Give ourselves time in case it goes sideways. Rue held the map like it was a weapon. Why you helping me if you think it's suicide? Rue asked. Aunt Cleo's face softened. Because Sable was my sister, she said. Because your mama deserved better. Because that baby deserves a chance to grow up free. She reached out and squeezed Rue's hand. And because sometimes you got to stand against the dark, even when you know it might swallow you. Rue spent the next 2 weeks digging graves. She did it at night, when Marcus was asleep, and the world was quiet, and the risk of someone seeing her was smaller. She left Bertie with Aunt Cleo. Each time she climbed into the wagon, her hands shook. Each time she climbed out, she reminded herself she had no choice. The first grave was in a church cemetery outside Valdosta. A simple stone read, Isaiah Crane, 1865 to 1898. Rue dug carefully, just enough to reach soil that had touched the coffin. She filled a small pouch, tied it with red string, and whispered an apology down into the earth. The dirt was cold. It smelled like clay and rot. The second grave was easier. The third was under a barn, and she had to pry up floorboards and dig through packed earth. By the 7th grave, her fingers were raw and split. Her back ached constantly. Her sleep came in short, broken pieces. That was when she saw him. The cemetery was deep in the woods, overgrown, unmarked. An old woman had drawn Rue a rough map on the back of an envelope, whispering directions like she was sharing a sin. Rue was on her knees digging when she felt it. The sensation of being watched so strongly it made her skin prickle. She looked up. A man hung in the air above her. There was no tree branch above him, no rope tied to anything. Yet the noose around his neck was tight, pulling his head at a wrong angle. He swayed slowly like wind moved him, but there was no wind. Rue's hands went numb. She had seen drawings in Mama Sable's journal. She knew that face, even rotted and gray. Isaiah Crane. He didn't speak. He just watched her with eyes that were both present and empty, like sleepwalker eyes. His clothes hung in tatters. His skin looked dead. Rue forced herself to keep digging. Filled the pouch, tied it closed, stood slowly. He was still there. "I'm trying to free you," Rue whispered. Her voice shook. "All of you." Isaiah's head tilted further. The bones in his neck cracked softly. Then he smiled. It was not a kind smile. Rue ran. She told Marcus the truth on the 13th night. Not because she wanted to, but because he followed her. He saw her at the edge of the woods, digging like a criminal. He confronted her when she came home. "You losing your mind," he said. "That's what this is. Heat, stress, you." "I'm trying to save our daughter from losing her mother," Rue said. "From what?" Marcus snapped. "A rash? Bad dreams?" She read him the entries. She explained Mama Sable, the oak, the jury. She explained the deal. Mothers taken on their first child's first birthday. Generation after generation. Marcus listened, face tight, fists clenched like he wanted to punch the world into making sense. "This is conjure talk," he said finally, voice cracking. "This is." He stopped and looked at her like she was a stranger. "You really believe it?" "Ain't about belief," Rue said. "It's about what's real. What's real is you ain't been sleeping," Marcus said. "What's real is you digging up graves at night." His voice broke. "Rue, please, let me take you see somebody. A doctor, a preacher, somebody. Nobody can help with this." Marcus stared at her for a long time. The fear in his eyes was raw and honest. He loved her. Rue could see that. He was desperate to fix something he didn't understand. "Then let me help," he said quietly. "Tell me what you need." Rue swallowed hard. "Need you to trust me," she said. 2 more weeks. After that, if I'm wrong, you can take me to every doctor in Georgia." Marcus didn't answer right away. Then he nodded. That night, the jury came. Rue woke up and couldn't move. All 12 of them stood around Bertie's crib, perfectly still. Each one had a noose around their neck, hanging from nothing. Their faces looked slack, empty. Marcus lay beside Rue with his eyes open. But he didn't blink. He didn't breathe right. He looked frozen, like time had stopped him mid-life. Isaiah Crane stood at the foot of the crib. He looked down at Bertie with something that almost looked like sadness. "The hour approaches," he said. His voice sounded like wind moving through hollow trees. "The oak hungers," he continued. "Your grandmother understood necessity. Why do you resist?" Rue tried to speak. Her throat felt tight. "Because she's my daughter," Rue managed. "I won't choose survival over her life." "Your grandmother chose survival over her daughter's life," Isaiah said. "Over your mother. The deal stands." "Then judge me instead," Rue said, voice shaking. "I'm the one breaking it." "The terms are specific," Isaiah said. "The mother must bring the firstborn child to the oak on the child's first birthday. Then, the mother is taken." He reached toward Bertie. His hand slid through the crib rail like it wasn't there. His fingers touched Bertie's cheek. Bertie whimpered in her sleep. "Don't," Rue whispered. "September 28th, Isaiah said. Midnight. Don't make us come for her." Then they vanished, all at once, like smoke blown away. Marcus gasped like he'd been underwater. He sat up so fast his knees hit the bed frame. He stared at the crib, at Bertie, at the empty air. "What the hell?" he said, voice shaking. "Did you see them?" "I saw," Rue said. Bertie started crying then, thin and sharp. Marcus stumbled to the crib and lifted her, holding her against his chest. His hands were shaking so hard Rue thought he might drop her. "They was real," Marcus whispered. "Jesus Christ, this is real." "Told you," Rue said softly. Marcus looked at her, eyes wide. "What we gonna do?" "I'm going to the Oak," Rue said. "I'm going to end this." "How?" Marcus asked. Rue shook her head. "Don't know yet, but I will." 2 days before Bertie's birthday, Rue had 12 pouches of grave dirt. Her hands were scarred. Her body felt hollow with exhaustion. The whispers came every night now, no longer patient, no longer quiet. "Rue, the Oak waits. The Oak remembers." Aunt Cleo arrived at dawn with the rest of the supplies. She looked at Rue's face, at the dark circles under her eyes, and didn't bother pretending everything would be fine. "Silver knife," she said, setting down a bundle. "Salt, candles. You got all the dirt?" "Then we doing it tonight," Aunt Cleo said. "Can't wait no longer." "Tonight ain't the birthday," Rue said. "You want to wait till the last minute." Aunt Cleo snapped. "Give them time to stop you. We go early. Catch them off guard if we can." Marcus stood in the doorway holding Bertie. "I'm coming," he said. "No," Rue said immediately. "She's my daughter too. If this goes wrong," Rue said, voice breaking, "she needs at least one parent left. You stay here. Keep her safe." Marcus's face crumpled, but he didn't argue. He knew she was right. Rue spent the day preparing like she was getting ready for church and a funeral at the same time. She bathed. She braided her hair tight. She went into the trunk at Mama Sable's cabin and pulled out the blue dress with white flowers, her mother's dress. It still held a faint scent of perfume, something soft and old. At sunset, Aunt Cleo loaded the wagon. Rue held Bertie for a long time, kissing her forehead again and again, like she was trying to memorize her. "You be good for your daddy," Rue whispered. "Mama loves you, always going to love you." Marcus walked her to the wagon. "You come back," he said, voice rough. "You hear me? You come back home." "I'll try," Rue whispered. "Don't try," Marcus said. "Do it." Rue climbed up beside Aunt Cleo. The wagon rolled forward. She didn't look back. The gallows oak stood at a crossroads 5 miles outside town. You could see it from far away because it was enormous. Its trunk was thick as a small house. Its branches stretched wide like veins against the sky. 12 nooses hung from the lower limbs, swaying in a slow rhythm, even though the air was still. Rue climbed down. The ground beneath the tree was bare dirt. Nothing grew there. The air felt colder around it, like the oak sucked warmth out of the world. Aunt Cleo stood beside. Story 5. It feels like playing Russian roulette, except the gun never leaves the circle, and the bullet is always real. Every time we sit together on the sand, legs crossed, backs straight, faces empty, I am convinced it will be my turn. I am certain that when the moment comes, when the name is read out loud, it will be mine. I will be the one standing. I will be the one begging. I will be the one who doesn't make it back to the fire. We are all hungry. Not the kind of hunger you feel after missing lunch, or the dull ache that comes before dinner. This hunger lives deeper. It eats at your bones. It makes your hands shake and your thoughts blur. It turns people into animals. We are starving. Starving enough to kill. 15 girls sit in the circle. A year ago, we were on top of the world, state champions, the best cheer team our tiny coastal town had ever produced. People knew our names. Teachers looked at us differently. Colleges sent letters. Scouts came to our games. We talked about nationals, like it was already guaranteed. Everything felt possible back then. Now, when I look around the circle, I barely recognize us. We are thin in ways that no amount of dieting ever caused. Our faces are sharp, our eyes sunken. Our uniforms hang off us like costumes stolen from better versions of ourselves. We are hollow, empty. The girls we used to be feel like a story someone else told me a long time ago. Across from me sits Astrid. What's left of her cheer skirt clings to her hips, the fabric faded and stiff with dirt and sweat. The school colors are almost gone now, washed down to dull black and gold. Her blonde curls hang in front of her face as she scratches furiously at a flat rock with a stick. She presses hard, like she's trying to carve through stone. Whoever's name she's writing is going to die. I study each girl carefully, forcing my eyes to move slowly, deliberately. I can't afford to look nervous. Expressions mean everything now. Guilt has a way of leaking out through small things. Shaking hands, darting eyes, a breath held too long. Cal sits 2 spots over, her red hair tangled and matted, freckles standing out stark against skin stretched too tight. She refuses to look at anyone. Her gaze stays locked on the sand between her knees. That alone makes my stomach tighten. I shift my focus to the girl closest to the fire, Bess, our leader. She sits upright, closer to the flames than the rest of us, like she needs the heat to remind herself she's still alive. Her brown hair is pulled into a tight ponytail. She wears jean shorts and nothing else, her skin dark and slick with sweat, too slick. I notice it immediately. Bess used to brag about her secret stash of deodorant. She made a point of it. Even now, even out here, she claimed she still had some hidden away. So why is she sweating so badly? Her smile is wide when she looks at us. Too wide. It doesn't reach her eyes. None of our smiles do anymore. We can all still taste Elsa. She lingers on my tongue, sweet and sour at the same time. The memory of her meat makes my mouth water before I can stop it. I hate myself for that. It was good. Stringy, yes, but easy to pull from the bone. Easy to chew once you got used to it. We told ourselves she was the imposter. That was how we justified it. 16 girls survived the plane crash. We were sure of it. We had counted bodies. We had counted seats. We had grown up together since freshman year, cheered side by side, shared secrets and sleepovers and heartbreaks. There were only 15 of us on the team. That meant one of us wasn't real. One of us had slipped in, wearing a familiar face, pretending to belong. At least, that's what we told ourselves. A shiver runs down my spine, and I fight to keep it from showing. I force my shoulders to relax. I keep my mouth neutral. I have nothing to hide, and yet my hands tremble in my lap. My breathing comes too fast, too shallow. I focus on slowing it down, on keeping my face calm. 16 girls sit under the fading sun. One of us is lying. One of us has convinced the rest that she belongs here. Isabel, have you finished? Bess's voice pulls me out of my thoughts. I glance up at her, then down at the rock in my hand. I finished carving my chosen name a while ago. I was the first one done. Being first feels dangerous. Ready, I say, keeping my voice soft. Bess nods and stands, brushing sand from her legs. We're ready to vote, she announces, her words tumbling out in a single breath. I can see it in her eyes. She hates this, hates being the one who has to lead us through it, hates being responsible for what comes next. Bess has always been strong, always dependable, but she's too human for this. Her hands are shaking. As always, she says, taking a deep breath. We'll go alphabetically around the circle. She turns to Anna. Anna is already crying, her filthy blonde curls falling forward as she curls into herself. Her arms wrap around her knees like she's trying to disappear. Anna, Bess prompts gently. Anna's head snaps up. Her eyes are wild, glassy, like an animal cornered in a trap. They dart from face to face. I don't want to do this, she whispers, her voice barely audible. I watch her closely. Her fear feels real. Too real. Bess's tone stays calm, almost motherly. Who do you think is the imposter, Anna? Anna's hands shake as she holds up her rock. I think it's Jessie, she says through clenched teeth. I saw her stealing food, and she refused to fill the water bucket last night. Jessie jerks upright, her dark eyes flashing. I was sick, you fucking bitch. Jessie, Bess warns, her voice sharp now, reminding us who's in charge. The circle moves on. One by one, names are revealed. Accusations whispered. Excuses snapped back. Just as I expected, Anna's name keeps coming up. Maybe it's because she cries too much. Maybe it's because she refused to eat Elsa when the rest of us did. Maybe it's because weakness is the easiest thing to hate when you're starving. When it's my turn, I lift my rock. Anna, I say quietly. Her face crumples. I try to smile at her. Something gentle. Something reassuring. I just think you're a really good actress. The lie slips out smoothly. Bess gathers the rocks, her fingers trembling as she counts. I hold my breath, counting along in my head, even though I already know how this ends. All right, Bess says finally, raising her voice. I've counted 13 votes for Anna, 2 for me, 1 for Isabel. Her eyes find Anna. I'm sorry, Anna. She looks frozen, like her body forgot how. Bess reaches into the waistband of her filthy jeans and pulls out our only weapon, a 9mm handgun. Cover your ears, she tells us. I slam my hands over my ears and squeeze my eyes shut. I tell myself I won't hear it. I do anyway. The gunshot cracks through the air. Anna screams. Her body hits the sand. I count my breaths. I count how long it takes for Bess's sobbing to stop. When I open my eyes again, Bess is already back to being our leader. Take her to the tent, she says flatly. Skin her, keep the organs, take all the meat. We do what we're told. I help strip and skin Anna. The others gag, turning their heads away. I don't. I don't remember what real food tastes like anymore. We cook the best parts of her over the fire. I watch her body turn slowly on the spit, the flames licking at her skin. I feel calm, comfortable. We will eat tonight. We won't starve. The imposter has been found. Then, a sound cuts through the moment. A yell, a strangled, horrified cry that doesn't belong to any of us. What the fuck? The girls jump to their feet, screaming. 7 teenage boys stand at the edge of the clearing. They look just as bad as we do. Blood smeared across their faces, eyes wide with shock, torn remnants of sports uniforms hanging off their bodies. Bess stumbles forward. Oh my God, she whispers. 15 girls and 15 boys were on that plane. Bess runs to the boy at the front, wrapping her arms around him. Cody, she sobs. We thought you were dead. The plane exploded. We found blood. We stopped looking for you. Cody steps back, his face twisting in disgust. His eyes lock onto me. He raises the knife in his hand. Bess, he says calmly, terrifyingly calm. Who the fuck is that? Story 6. I woke up with the taste of metal and chemicals in my mouth, sharp and bitter, like I had been sucking on a coin soaked in bleach. The sensation was so vivid that for a moment I thought I was dreaming. Then I realized I could feel it. I could feel everything. The accident had been bad. Bad enough to put me into a coma. Bad enough that my body became something people spoke about in hushed voices. Before that day, my life had been full of luxury and ease. Money, comfort, plans for the future. I had never imagined how quickly all of it could be stripped away. At first, there was only blackness. Not sleep, not rest, just nothing. Then slowly, it was like being born again. I could see light through my eyelids. I could blink. I could move my eyes from side to side. I could answer questions with tiny signals, just enough to show that I understood. But that was where it ended. I was trapped, locked inside a body that would not move, watching the people I loved stand around my bed every day, crying for me, begging me to wake up, refusing to let go of the idea that I would come back to them. The hospital became my prison, a cruel one. Machines beeped constantly, their sounds drilling into my head. If I twitched wrong, if my heart rate changed too fast, alarms would scream and nurses would rush in, adjusting wires and tubes like I was a broken device. Everything happened on a strict schedule. Check vitals, adjust medication, leave, repeat. Over time, I learned the rhythm of it. I learned when the lights would dim and when they would snap back on. I learned which nurses were gentle and which ones treated me like furniture. I learned that people talked freely around someone they believed couldn't hear. They said things they never would have said otherwise. Secrets slipped out, confessions, regrets, plans for a future that didn't include me. After more flatlines and rushed resuscitations than I could count, they moved me. I was taken to a smaller room, tucked away in an older wing of the hospital that hadn't quite caught up with the renovations. The walls were dull. The ceiling cracked in places. The room felt forgotten. My new nurse was named Linda. I heard her before I saw her. The sharp click of high heels against the smooth floor announced her arrival every time. She wore the same pair every day, scuffed at the heel, slipping just a little when she turned, like she was always on the edge of losing her balance. She checked my vitals efficiently, then pulled a chair close to my bed. From the corner of my eye, I watched her light a cigarette, completely unconcerned with hospital rules. She crossed her legs, her short skirt riding higher, revealing the lace edge of her black stockings. She talked while she smoked, about the doctor she wanted to impress, about how she knew he'd notice her eventually, about how he'd sweep her off her feet, and everyone would see that she was special. Her confidence sounded forced, like she was trying to convince herself more than anyone else. Her eyes kept drifting toward the hallway. Each time, just for a second, there was something in that look. Hope, maybe, or fear. Then she leaned in close to me, lowering herself onto her knees, resting her elbows on my bed. Her voice dropped, rough and urgent. "I don't know if you understand," she whispered, "but I need to warn you about this place. Strange things happen here, things people don't talk about. This ward barely has any patients, and I'm the only one who sees them." My heart rate jumped, the machine responding instantly. "I've seen them come and go," she continued. "I see them, She stood up quickly, smoothing her uniform, flashing a tight smile that showed her stained teeth. I should go. I'll be back. And she left. I lay there, unable to move, my thoughts racing. Who had she seen? What did she mean? If something was wrong, why wasn't she reporting it? Fear wrapped around my chest, and the machine beside me began to beep faster. Another nurse came in, someone I didn't recognize. She adjusted the settings, frowned at the monitor, and left without a word. Later, my family arrived. I tried to tune them out, but certain words cut through the fog. Someone said they had to move on, that it was time to face reality. The hesitation in his voice told me he wanted to say more but couldn't. My boyfriend stood beside my bed, his familiar cologne mixing with the sharp hospital smell. I remembered that scent on a beach at sunset, the warmth of his skin. Now it felt wrong. I know this is strange, he said softly, but losing you and your sister, it brought us closer. In a way, I'm still loving part of you. Doctors came and went, speaking like I wasn't there. She'll never come out of this, one said. It's hopeless. Their words echoed in my mind long after they left. Linda returned later, adjusting my machines with a casual air. I see you haven't met them yet, she said lightly. That's good. Maybe they'll skip you. She laughed, then leaned in. Oh, and I heard the anesthesiologist from the 4th floor is sleeping with the hospital director. But you didn't hear that from me. There was something she wasn't saying. I could feel it. Fear followed me into the night. The room grew darker, shadows stretching across the walls. Dust floated in the moonlight, beautiful and terrible at the same time. I tried to sleep. Then the door creaked open. The sound was slow and painful, metal grinding against wood. I couldn't lift my head to see, but I smelled it immediately. Rot, dampness, something old and wrong. Hands appeared at the foot of my bed, gripping the plastic rail. Whatever it was pulled itself up, crawling over me. Its weight pressed down on my chest. Its limbs felt wrong, its nails sharp as they dug into my skin. It whimpered like a child. Then it leaned over me. Its eyes were large and black, full of something curious and empty at the same time. Its skin was gray and wet-looking, dotted with warts. Its long fingers brushed my face gently, almost lovingly. It made a sound, a low humming, and my fear blurred into something else. Warmth washed over me. My eyelids grew heavy. I woke to pain. The creature crouched over me, its body folded strangely. My stomach was open. My insides were in its hands. Blood covered its mouth. I couldn't scream. Then I woke again to Linda stitching me closed, her face calm, practiced. She dressed the wound, covered me, and sighed. I wish this wasn't how it had to be, she said. I added something to your IV. It should help. People came and went. I tried to move, tried to warn them. Nothing worked. The next night the door opened again. This time there were 2 of them. They sang together, their voices weaving into something almost comforting. They fed again. I woke up bleeding. Linda patched me up. A doctor discussed organ failure like it was paperwork. They talked about the morgue, about donation. Linda asked if I could feel anything. What does it matter? The doctor replied. Later, Linda stayed. She spoke about debts, about promises, about things that would never be paid. More medication flowed into me. That night, there were more of them. They took more. I stayed conscious, drowning in pain. When the alarms went off, the doctor ordered me moved. They wheeled me through bright hallways, chatting like nothing was wrong. Cold air hit me as the blankets were removed. The mortician stood over me. "Just stop fighting," he said gently. I tried to breathe. Blood filled my lungs. Panic surged. He injected something into my arm. Everything slowed. The last thing I heard was his voice, calm and distant. "You can eat the rest now." Story 7. I hadn't eaten properly for months, and the hunger had become a constant companion. It wasn't the normal kind of hunger, the one that comes and goes with missed meals. This was something deeper, something that lived inside my bones and whispered to me when the house was quiet. Still, even then, I never imagined I could be hungry enough to eat something that wasn't meant to be food. Never hungry enough to think about eating something that was still alive. My wife felt differently. I stood in the doorway of the kitchen, arms folded, trying to make myself smaller as I watched her work. She moved with calm precision, every motion deliberate, almost elegant. Her hands glided over the countertops as if she were performing a ritual she'd practiced for years. The cooler on the floor rattled softly, and the sound made my stomach twist. Claws scraped against plastic. Something inside scraped back. The air smelled of salt water and raw flesh. "I'm starving," she said, her voice low and thick with anticipation. She cracked open the shell of a crab that was still moving, its legs twitching weakly. I felt my face tighten as she slid a skewer through its body. The thing struggled, frantic and helpless, and then she lifted it to her mouth. She closed her eyes as she ate. She made a sound, soft and pleased, like someone savoring their favorite dessert. I couldn't look away. Horror held me in place, a cold hand on my spine. She chewed slowly, deliberately, as if every bite deserved respect. Then she looked at me and smiled. "You're always so quiet when I'm cooking," she said, swallowing. "It's like you're watching me with those big puppy eyes of yours." She laughed, a deep, warm sound that made my face burn. "I'm just enjoying the show," I said, forcing a smile that felt wrong on my face. She laughed again, louder this time. "You're such a weirdo, but I love you for it." The kitchen felt warm and safe in that moment, cozy even. The crabs were finally still, the cooler quiet. The smell of cooking meat filled the room, familiar and comforting in its own way. She moved around the space like it belonged to her completely, confident and unbothered. And yet, beneath that comfort, I felt something else, something animal, something old. It clung to her like a shadow, just under the skin, barely visible unless you looked too closely. It fascinated me, it repelled me, and it made my chest ache with a love I couldn't fully explain. The next evening, I came home from work to the same scene, only heavier. The kitchen felt different, like the air itself had thickened. Blood stained the cutting board. The smell was sharper, metallic, almost sweet. She stood over the counter like a priestess at an altar, cleaver in hand, her expression focused and reverent. It shouldn't have bothered me. We ate lobster all the time. She was careful, skilled. She always said it was the humane way. Still, as she worked, my head filled with imagined sounds, struggling, scraping, screaming that no one else could hear. The light from the windows seemed to dim, as if the world outside wanted no part of what was happening inside our kitchen. A phrase surfaced in my mind, uninvited and heavy, and the Lord set a mark upon Cain. I watched her hands. I loved her. God, I loved her. But there was something dark beneath her skin, something restless and hungry. One lobster fought harder than the others. It thrashed wildly, knocking over a container of sauce that spilled across the counter. For a brief moment, their eyes met, And I swear there was understanding there. Recognition. Her jaw tightened. She brought the cleaver down, but the creature resisted, its movements frantic and violent. Sauce and water splashed everywhere. Her face twisted with irritation as she fought to finish it. When it finally went still, the sound of crushed shell and flesh echoed in the room. She lifted a piece to her mouth, then froze. Her expression shifted, disgust flickering across her face. She spat it out. "Too much stress," she muttered. "The fear gets into the meat, ruins it." That night, I lay awake beside her, staring into the darkness. My mind replayed the sounds, the movements her face as she worked. Shadows pressed in around me. The words came again, heavier this time. "Whatever a man sows, that shall he also reap." Months passed, and I stopped eating with her. At first, I told myself I just wasn't hungry. Then, I admitted the truth. The sight of the food made me sick. The thought of it made my stomach clench. She tried to coax me back, tried to laugh it off, but I couldn't bring myself to join her rituals anymore. I did it for love. Everything I did was for love. But love doesn't stop hunger. As weeks turned into months, my body grew weaker. I lost weight. My hands shook. My energy faded. But my mind sharpened, painfully so. Every smell was stronger. Every sound cut deeper, and the hunger came roaring back, worse than ever. At night, I held her close, my body pressed against hers. She smelled sweet, too sweet. Something about it made my head spin. I felt an obsession growing inside me, a need to be close to her, to touch her, to breathe her in. I didn't agree with her morals. I told myself that over and over. But I also knew she would die for her own convictions, sharp-tongued and unyielding. One night, my hand moved before my thoughts could catch up. I stroked her hair. My fingers slid down her arm. I pulled her closer, her body warm and real against mine. She stirred but didn't wake. In the darkness, my teeth sank into her shoulder. The sound she made was animal and terrified. She screamed as my bite tore through skin. Blood flooded my mouth, warm and thick. My body reacted before my mind could stop it. Muscle gave way under my teeth. Sinew parted like it was nothing. My head throbbed. My skin itched. My bones ached like they were splitting apart. My thoughts broke up, cutting in and out like a broken radio. I felt like I was on fire. "You have eaten the flesh of the living, and now you will know what it is to be consumed." Moonlight spilled through the window. Pale and unforgiving, she sobbed in the corner of the room, clutching a belt around her arm, trying desperately to stop the bleeding. She looked at me, then back at her wound, pulling tighter. A helpless animal caught by something it trusted. I watched her with a strange calm. My senses were overwhelming. I could smell her blood, her fear, the sweat on her skin. I felt detached, curious, like I was watching a story unfold. What happens next? Would she live? Would I? The shadows in the room twisted and stretched, alive with something ancient and watching. God, I loved her. And because I loved her, I surrendered. Then everything went quiet. The pounding in my head slowed. The hunger dulled. Darkness closed in, thick and complete. The last thought that drifted through me was ancient and final, echoing like a curse and a prophecy all at once. "Benjamin shall raven as a wolf. In the morning he shall devour the prey, and at night he shall divide the spoil." Story 8. I'm no stranger to rough travel. I've backpacked through enough countries to know that safe and comfortable are not guaranteed parts of the journey. I've slept on airport floors, squeezed into overheated buses, and waited for late-night rides in places where the streetlights flicker like they're tired of trying. So, sitting alone at a bus stop outside a dim servo in Rockhampton at 1 a.m. didn't feel unusual at all. I sat on the bench, swatting away mosquitoes that buzzed at my ears and ankles like they owned the place, and I waited for a greyhound that might not even show up. The road was quiet. The servo lights were too yellow, and everything felt slightly unreal in that late-night way, like the world had thinned out and left only the essentials behind. The trip had been a mix of smooth days and awkward nights. I'd spent years exploring other countries, chasing new landscapes, and trying to see the world with wide eyes. But after all that time, I decided it was finally time to explore my own. Australia had always been there, enormous and familiar, and somehow still unknown. 3 weeks earlier, I'd started in Sydney, using one of those Greyhound passes that makes you feel free right up until the moment the bus doesn't arrive. For the most part, I had managed fine. I'd seen coastal towns, big cities, stretches of highway that melted into blue sky and empty land. The only real scare had been a night in Morgue, when my bus never came, leaving me stranded at 3 in the morning with nothing but my backpack and a quiet sense of dread. I was lucky that time. I wandered until I found a pub closing up, and the owners took pity on me. They had a spare room and a kindness that felt rare at that hour. After that, I stuck closer to the coast. I told myself it was for scenery, but if I'm honest, it was for people. The inland routes looked beautiful on a map, but the map didn't show the real truth. Australia is like that. You can be surrounded by noise and lights one moment, and then, a short drive later, you're in the kind of silence that makes you feel small. This stop in Rockhampton was supposed to be simple, an overnight break between services before heading north. I wasn't even going all the way to Cairns. I planned to get off at Proserpine and try my luck hitching to Airlie Beach. A flickering streetlight near the bus stop buzzed faintly and threatened to die every few seconds. That was when I heard footsteps. Not rushed, not casual either. Heavy steps, measured, coming from the darker edge of the servo lights. A man about my age stepped out of the shadows. He looked tired in the way shift workers do, like sleep had been optional for too long. His clothes were dusty, his shoulders slumped, his eyes bleary. "How you goin', mate?" he said, voice thick with late-night boredom. "G'day, mate. How you goin'?" I replied automatically. And that was that. A typical Australian exchange. The question is asked, and never truly answered. We sat in silence for a minute, then started the usual traveler talk. Names, where you're from, where you're headed. His name was Andrew. He told me he'd been working at a local rendering plant for about 4 weeks and was headed home. Of course he was. Rockhampton is cattle country. Beef capital territory. It's not the kind of place people visit for fun, unless they have a reason. The longer we talked, the more the conversation drifted in and out of awkwardness. Not uncomfortable exactly, just that slow, dry, late-night vibe where words come out because silence feels too big. Then, about an hour later, we heard it. The squeal of heavy brakes down the road. Both of us leaned forward, squinting through the haze of night air. A large red bus rolled toward us, its headlights bright enough to bleach the color from everything around it. Above the windshield, the destination glowed. Cairns. I felt relief immediately. Nothing feels better than seeing the ride you've been waiting for in the middle of nowhere. The bus screeched to a stop, and the driver climbed out to load Andrew's bags. "Roadblocks up tonight, fellas," the driver said. like it was no big deal. Might run a bit over schedule. She's all good, mate, Andrew replied with a tired chuckle. Gives us more time for a kip. I forced a smile, even though I couldn't relate. I've never been able to sleep upright. Buses, planes, trains. My body refuses. I need to lie down, or I stay awake. Still, I was curious about the roadblocks. It didn't sound like normal road work, not at 2 in the morning. But I figured maybe the road was rough. Maybe barriers were left up overnight. I climbed on and chose a seat toward the back. A moment later, Andrew stomped up the aisle and slid into the row opposite me. Gonna be a long one by the sounds of it, mate, he said, nodding toward the driver, who was speaking into the radio. We couldn't make out the voice on the other end, just muffled words and static. But I caught bits and pieces. Detours, delays, something about an accident northbound. That'd explain the roadblocks, I said. Andrew nodded. Must have been a bad one. Wouldn't block off the Bruce for nothing. Truck rollover, maybe, I suggested. He hummed in agreement, pulled out a travel pillow, and turned his head toward the window. Gonna try get some sleep. Night, mate, he said. Night, bud, I replied. The bus pulled away, and the servo lights vanished behind us. Out there, the highway felt endless. Even during the day, that stretch can look like nothing. At night, it becomes something else entirely. The darkness outside the windows was thick. The trees along the road looked like tall silhouettes pressed up against the glass. Every now and then, the headlights caught a fence post or a sign, and then it disappeared again. Time dragged. Minutes felt longer than they should. The road hummed beneath us, and the bus rocked gently with the movement of a tired machine doing what it was built to do. Eventually, my eyelids grew heavy. I slipped into that halfway state where you're not asleep, but you're not fully awake either. Then the radio crackled again. I blinked awake and saw bright lights outside, another servo glowing in the darkness like a tiny island. The bus turned in. On the radio, the driver's voice sounded tense. The response was clipped and repetitive. Do not proceed. Detour west. Repeat. Do not proceed. Okay, so we were detouring. I sat up straight, rubbed my eyes, and checked the signs outside. Marlboro. The bus stopped. Passengers began filing out to stretch and buy snacks. The driver stayed near the front. Radio pressed close, still speaking to whoever was on the other end. As I stood to leave, I glanced at Andrew. He was asleep, mouth slightly open, breathing heavy. I considered waking him, but he'd wanted sleep. I left him alone. Inside the servo, I grabbed a hot sausage roll and a Dare iced coffee. Something simple, something familiar. I paid at the counter, and that's when I noticed the guy working there. He didn't look tired like most graveyard workers. He looked blank, like he was only half present. His eyes were fixed in a distant stare. How's your night going, mate? I asked. No reply. Get many customers through the night here, or... I tried again. Nothing. I shrugged, ready to move on, when he suddenly spoke. 9:50, he said flatly. Then, without changing his expression, he added, You traveling on the Greyhound tonight? Yeah, I said, handing him a 10. He took it with that same empty stare, opened the register, reached for change. It's all good, mate. Keep the change, I said quickly. I turned to leave, and his voice followed me. There's been an accident up ahead on the Bruce. Yeah, we heard, I replied. Any idea what happened? He just stared at me. The silence stretched until it became uncomfortable. I turned again, and that's when he spoke like he'd been waiting for the moment. "We've got a few rooms out the back," he said, "if you wanted to book in for the night." It caught me off guard. "Ah, nah, I'm good, mate. Thanks anyway." I walked out. But even as I crossed back toward the bus, I glanced behind me. He was still watching through the glass, eyes locked in that same hard stare, like he could see right through my skin. Anyone stuck in a lonely servo at this hour would be weird, I told myself. I tried to laugh it off. Back on the bus, I ate my sausage roll and sipped the coffee. Andrew was awake now, sitting up and blinking like he'd been yanked out of a dream. "Whereabouts are we?" he asked. "Marlborough," I said. "Highway's still closed. We're detouring." His face tightened slightly. He stared out the window, and for the first time since we met, he looked genuinely bothered. "What's wrong?" I asked. "Detour take ages?" "Lot longer," he said. Then, after a pause, "And it's about the last place you want to be this time of night." I chuckled, expecting him to smile. He didn't. His expression stayed blank, the fear underneath it barely hidden. The bus turned. The indicator clicked loudly in the quiet cabin. Tick, 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 tick. We swung left onto a worn, narrow road. The bitumen was faded and patchy under the moonlight. In places, the surface turned to dirt and back again, like the road couldn't decide what it wanted to be. Andrew spoke again, his voice quieter now. "My old man was a trucker," he said. "He'd come past here sometimes, pointed out the mountains, told me stories." "Yeah?" I said. "What kind of stories?" He turned his head toward me slowly. "They call this road the Marlborough Stretch," he said. "Some call it the Horror Stretch. Name don't come from nothing." A cold feeling crept into my stomach, and I stared out at the trees. They were thicker now, lining both sides of the road like walls. Tall pines and gums, dark and still. The headlights cut a tunnel through them. "The Marlborough Stretch," I repeated. "I think I've heard that. Murders in the 70s and 80s, right?" "Missing persons, too," Andrew said. "Lots. You don't drive this road at night. You just don't." His leg began bouncing, fast and anxious. I tried to tell myself he was spooking me for fun, but his face wasn't playful. It was tight, with genuine belief. "Got mobile service?" he asked suddenly. I pulled my phone out and checked. Nothing. No bars. He checked his too. "Nothing," he muttered. A baby started crying up the front of the bus. The sound was thin and tired, the kind of cry that's meant more to communicate discomfort than fear. Then the driver barked, loud enough to jolt everyone. "Keep the kid quiet." My head snapped up. "Jesus Christ," I said out loud. "It's a baby, mate. She can't help it." "Ease up," Andrew shouted, backing me. The driver didn't calm down. He sounded angrier. "You want to be stuck out here if this bus crashes?" he yelled. "I need to focus on the road." The mother tried to hush the baby, but the crying only grew louder. The driver's rage grew with it, and with each angry burst, the bus seemed to speed up. Faster, faster. It wasn't subtle. My stomach lifted slightly, like a plane hitting turbulence. The trees outside became a blur. The road felt too narrow for that kind of speed. The driver screamed profanities at the mother, his voice sharp with pure malice. Andrew and I stood up, gripping our seatbacks to keep balance. I could feel panic rising. This wasn't normal anger. This was someone losing control in the worst possible place to lose it. I moved a step toward the aisle, thinking I should go forward, grab someone, do something. And then, bang, The world became metal. Metal everywhere. The taste of it, the smell of it, the sensation of it slicing into my collarbone, cold and sharp, like being cut open by the edge of a blade. When I came to, it didn't feel like the movies. There was no screaming from me, because my body wouldn't let me. I couldn't even process the pain properly at first. Everything was quiet, distant, like I was underwater. I slowly slid a jagged piece of broken seat frame out of my body. I did it calmly, like it wasn't real, like it was happening to someone else. The bus was on its side, down an embankment. Glass glittered everywhere. The smell inside was thick and wrong. I won't describe what I saw in detail. I still can't. I carry those images like shards under the skin, and I don't want to give them to anyone else. All I knew in that moment was that I had to get out. I dragged myself through the doorway, then rolled onto the ground outside. The air hit me like a slap, cool, damp, full of grass and dirt. I staggered to my feet. The road stretched endlessly in both directions, empty and silent. Trees surrounded me. Then I heard it, a howl from the tree line. Another joined it. Then more, until the darkness seemed filled with voices. I knew what made that sound. Dingoes. And they were not far away. I had to choose. Stay with the wreck, where the smell of blood would draw them in, or walk down the highway and hope the road itself offered some kind of safety. I don't know if I chose right, but I chose movement. I started walking. Every step was agony. The grass clawed at my shins. My shoulder burned. My head felt thick and dizzy. The howls followed me, teasing, closing in. Every now and then, I heard paws moving through leaves. Not far. Then I heard a new sound. Thump, thump, thump. Across the road, something heavy, moving through mud and scrub. Thump, thump, thump. Closer. Before I could run, 6 huge shapes burst from the trees. Kangaroos. Massive, 5 feet tall at least. Their eyes caught the moonlight and flashed pale, making them look unnaturally bright. They didn't hop. They stood, still as statues. They stared at me for long minutes, and I stood there too, frozen, because I knew kangaroos could kill if they wanted. Then, in perfect unison, they turned and walked. Not hopped, walked. Single file. 1 foot in front of the other, like humans. My brain couldn't make sense of it. Kangaroos don't walk like that. They just don't. I stood there dumbfounded, and that's when I felt a hand clamp onto my shoulder. I nearly jumped out of my skin. "Mate," a voice hissed. "Andrew." Relief hit me so hard it felt like weakness. "Jesus, mate," I gasped. I didn't know anyone else got out. "Same," he said. "I tried to wake you when I came to, but you weren't moving. Thought you were gone." Howls cut through the air again, and we started walking together. "Best we keep moving," Andrew said. "Stay in one spot, and we're an easier target. Dingoes usually keep away from the highway." "Yeah," I said, then added quietly, "If they even are dingoes, what are you talking about?" "The ruse," I said. "Did you see that? They walked." Ruse can get a bit weird out here. That response didn't match what happened. Not even close. He said it like it was normal, like he'd watched it 100 times. My skin prickled. "Did anyone else make it?" I asked. "Where are they?" Andrew didn't answer right away. Our footsteps were the only sound. "Andrew?" I pressed. "Yes," he replied sharply. I said, "Did anyone else make it?" He stared straight ahead. His face was pale now, expression blank. "Oh," he said slowly, "yeah, a few." "Where are they?" They went their own way. What? I snapped, anger and fear mixing. People are dead back there. A mother and her baby. It is not my place to question their will. I stopped walking. That wasn't Andrew's voice. It didn't even sound human. I turned toward him, and my stomach dropped so fast it felt like falling. The face looking back at me was not Andrew's. It was pale and smooth, like a blank mask with minimal features. Eyes that didn't blink, a mouth that didn't move right. Andrew was gone. I stumbled backward, tripped, and fell hard onto the road. It didn't chase me. It just stood there, staring. Then its head turned slowly, not toward me, but toward the trees across the road. That's when I heard it, growling. Shapes moved between trunks, snouts and teeth. A pack stepping forward. 4, 5, 6, 7. Too many. The pale thing's expression shifted. It smiled, then grinned, then began to laugh, as if it was enjoying the moment, enjoying the fear, enjoying the fact that it would get to watch what happened to me. I screamed, voice cracking, "What do you want from me?" It stopped laughing. Its face went blank again. Slowly, it lifted a finger and pointed at me like I was being selected. The world went dead silent for a heartbeat. Then the dingoes stepped out. But they didn't move like dingoes. Their bodies twisted, and I heard the sickening click of bones and joints realigning. Click, click, click. They rose. Forelegs stretched forward like arms. Hind legs straightened. They walked upright, jerky and unnatural, bones grinding with each step. Click, click, click. Tongs hanging, mouths frothing, teeth bared. They were dogs, but they weren't dogs. Panic took over. I turned and ran toward the nearest tree line, limping at full speed, pain exploding with every step. Behind me, the clicking followed. Click, click, close. Too close. I burst into the forest, blindly choosing darkness over those things. Branches whipped my face. Grass tore at my ankles. I couldn't see more than a few feet ahead. The clicking surrounded me, spreading out, circling. Then another sound cut through it. A yelp. Not a hunting sound. A pain sound. Then another. Something was hurting them. Something was killing them. I didn't stop to think. I forced my body into a run. Pain became distant. Fear became the only fuel. That's when I slammed into something solid. Metal. Cold. I fell backward hard, breath knocked from my lungs. In front of me was something huge, outlined by dim strips of light that swirled and rippled in patterns my eyes couldn't fully track. The lights made me dizzy. They felt wrong to look at, like staring at something that wasn't meant for humans. The thing began to rise, slow and powerful. Trees didn't snap around it. They bent, warping around its shape, as if reality itself softened in its presence. As it lifted higher, it became transparent, fading until it was almost invisible. Only a faint outline and a trailing ribbon of light. Then it shot upward and vanished into the sky. I stood there shaking, trying to understand what I'd just seen. Then I looked down at the ground. Torches. Lit torches, planted in the earth all around me. I turned slowly, and the darkness opened up into something I couldn't process. Tents. Hundreds of them, maybe more. A whole hidden camp among the trees, stretching farther than the torchlight reached. I took one step back. Footsteps approached. 3 men came into view wearing blue singlets. 2 held hunting knives. 1 carried a rifle. They looked wrong. Their faces were deformed in ways that made my stomach tighten. Eyes set oddly, features twisted. "So you the reason they comin' around here tonight?" the man with the rifle said. "What?" I just... My voice shook. My bus crashed. People died. People are dead. One of the knife men wiped fresh blood off his blade, looking amused. The rifle man lowered his weapon slightly, as if he almost believed me. Then he lifted it again. The gunshot cracked, loud enough to ring through my skull. Instinct threw me to the ground, hands over my ears, heart pounding. When I looked up, the men weren't aiming at me. They were walking past. I turned, breath caught in my throat. Something huge lay on the forest floor beside them. A long, twisted body, a tall shape, collapsed like it had been folded wrong. There was a gunshot wound in what could only be called a head. Something drifted out of it. Something I didn't recognize. Not blood. Not smoke. Not anything I could name. "He was 'bout to get ya," one of the men said, giggling like my fear was funny. I tried to thank them, arm shaking as I reached out, but they stepped back like I was the dangerous thing. The man with the rifle stepped close again. "Now you already know there's scarier shit out here than us," he said. "But don't get thinking you welcome back. Don't you ever come back." Before I could respond, he slammed the rifle into my face. The world exploded into white, then black. Doctors later told me I was out for 3 days. An induced coma, they called it. They said I was found outside Townsville General Hospital at 5 in the morning, dumped there like a package. An off-duty nurse discovered me and called it in. Queensland police questioned me. Nurses asked questions. Everyone asked the same thing in different words. How did I get there? No one saw a vehicle. No one saw anyone drop me off. They swore I was simply there one moment and not there the next. I told them what happened, because that's what humans do. When something shatters your world, you speak. You try to make sense of it with words, even if words aren't enough. Some people treated me like a lunatic. Honestly, I don't blame them. If someone told me they saw upright walking dingoes and kangaroos marching single file into the trees, I'd probably laugh too. But some didn't laugh. Some went pale the moment I said where it happened. The Marlboro. Their faces changed, like they'd heard a name they weren't supposed to hear out loud. That's the part that stays with me. Not the gore. Not the crash. Not even the things in the forest. It's the way some people believed me without needing proof. I don't take inland roads anymore. I don't take detours through the middle of nowhere. I've seen enough of the outback for one lifetime. Maybe there are other places like that. Maybe the country has pockets of wrongness hidden in the vast empty spaces between towns. But I know that stretch of road is something else. And if you ever find yourself driving between Rockhampton and Serena, and you notice the daylight fading too fast, turn around. Go back. Find another route. Find people. And if it's too late for that, if night falls while you're still out there, park somewhere you think is safe. Lock the doors. Keep the lights off. Close your eyes and ignore whatever you hear. The rustles in the trees, the howls in the distance, the taps on your window. Because out there, in that darkness, the world doesn't always stay shaped the way it should.